My presentation is going to be about smaller but continuous climate-related changes that are happening, the changes that affect our outdoor experiences. Because I think experience in the outdoor is one way to get people to appreciate and love the outdoors and the environment around us. When you appreciate something, then you have that innate wanting to protect it. So being outdoors rather than spending a lot of time indoors, being outdoors is one of the key things for protecting our environment. Nova Scotia is a beautiful province. Our province, the boundary of our province is mostly coastline, gorgeous coastlines, and in the inland we have many lakes and rivers and streams surrounded by wilderness. So it's a beautiful place to be exploring. One change that affects how we explore the outdoors is the unpredictability of the wind and also the increased wind speed. So when we talk about the wind unpredictability and the wind speed, nothing like being on a canoe on a lake to feel the changes in the wind over, if you have been going to the same place for a long period of time, let's say like a year after year, then you really see the difference in the wind pattern. One place that we love going canoeing is the Kejumkujik National Park, which is also a National Historic Site due to thousands of years of Mi'kmaq cultural heritage there. And also when we are there, when we go canoeing, the waterways, the canoe routes that we use are mainly the waterways that Mi'kmaq nations established a long time ago. So just to give you some understanding about the landscape of this particular park that we visit so regularly, it's located in the southwestern part of Nova Scotia, and that whole area is full of many lakes. Within the park itself, there are about 35 lakes. When it's just gorgeous. You can explore the park, the backcountry of the park, by either hiking or canoeing. There are canoe routes that you can do. There's a loop in the northern part of the park, or you can go here do various loops in the southern areas. So you can either canoe or you can hike here. As I said, there are more than 35 lakes within the park boundary. You could do various loops. Here's the northern loop here, and you can go here, or you can do all these different loops, and you can spend actually weeks here. There are many campsites, so when you go, you don't do it all in one day. It's impossible. So you can stop in different campsites and complete your loops. You can actually just be there. Sometimes you hardly see another human being. And also the beauty of the place, it's not just the lakes. So when you're there, you can canoe into the sunset. You can see our canoe here in the silhouette. You could canoe early in the morning into the mist. You don't have to be a very well-experienced backcountry person to experience this park. Families can go. These are my two children. The picture was taken about 13 years ago. You just have to prepare ahead of time and follow the backcountry guidelines, and you will have a great time there. So the multi-day canoe trips, when you are there, usually before going, we always check the wind pattern. We check if there are going to be any bad weather, thunderstorms, any hurricanes coming, how is the wind like, you check all that. And when I compare how it was when we were canoeing 25, 30 years ago versus how it is now, there's a big change in the wind predictability and also the wind speed. So let's say 25, 30 years ago, when we really plan and go, most of the time, we get what we expect. The wind is what we expect it to be. We have a good time. And when I think back, maybe I can think of 2 or 3 occasions where we encountered unexpectedly heavy or rough situations. But now, during the last several years, when we go, we still do the same thing. We look at the weather 3-4 days beforehand. We, where the wind coming from, wind directions, how the wind speed going to be, and daily, even hourly wind pattern. We would look at all that. And it's one thing to look at while you are still here, and when you go to the lake, now the wind has increased, and then while you are in the lake paddling to get to place from A to B, sometimes it can take hours when you're paddling, the wind has picked up and it's not what we expected. So now, during recent years, whenever we go there, more often than not, we have experienced unexpected wind conditions. So that, when we think back, it's not a place that we go every now and then, but we go there every year, several times a year, to the same place. So it's a good natural comparison, nature's experiment to see how the wind has changed back then versus now. So, when you are indoors, you would not even look at the wind speed. If the wind is 15 kilometers per hour gusting to, let's say, 20-25 versus it has changed as the day goes, or even, unexpectedly now it is 25 kilometers per hour gusting to 35, you wouldn't even notice anything. You wouldn't even think much of it. But when you're on a canoe, if the wind has changed that much, it's a big deal. And especially if the wind is now 35 gusting to 45, 50, you're facing about meter-high waves. So these are some things to really think about, how the climate change has basically increased that additional dimension to us when you're exploring the outdoors. The other element that I want to mention is something that was already mentioned by Frances, which is the increasing encounters with ticks. This is, of course, a major health concern due to the increased risk of Lyme disease and other tick-borne diseases. I want to give you an example how much it has increased. So about, let's say, 25 years ago, when we go outdoors, whether hiking or canoeing, we rarely see a tick. If we happen to see a tick, it was big news. And then we noticed as the time went, we noticed more and more ticks. But now, last year and the year before, the amount of ticks we have encountered during the spring and summer is uncountable. And I want to give an example. Last year, my daughter and I did our traditional canoe trip that we do every year in the spring. So this is again in Keji, doing the Northern Loop. There's a beautiful brook here. We call it the Still Brook. It's a small river, very windy, gorgeous, and you can canoe along this for hours and hours. We especially go there in late May or early June to catch a glimpse of spring flowers. And the river banks are just lined. It's carpeted with all kinds of flowers. I have some pictures here to show you. These are from last year, the rhododendrons and the sheep laurel, cotton grass. And the camera doesn't do justice. When you're there, it's 360-degree view. You're seeing this winding river with beautiful carpet of flowers and the birds flying over and on the river bank. And, sometimes you see beaver dams and beavers swimming in the water, muskrats, and even river otters and beautiful turtles, sunbathing on the river bank. It's just a gorgeous place to be. Every year we look forward to our trip. So last year, my daughter and I were doing that trip. I want to go back to that slide. And we were, going from here and way back further deep into the woods here. And we noticed from the get-go, there were so many ticks. And we couldn't, when we were doing portages, we couldn't even put our bag down on a resting place. And we had to check our bags before we put it out on our bag, because we have seen many ticks climbing on the bag. And finally, when we got to our campsites, various, number of different campsites that we spent a couple of days, in one particular campsite, we were in our mosquito net, because this is also the time for blooming black flies and mosquitoes. So we put our net, and the same net that we used to use, these are my two children, the picture was taken about 80 years ago, but we were using the same tent, and we were sitting, and we had a tarp on the bottom, and we had tucked in the edges of the mosquito underneath, so the black flies and the mosquitoes couldn't come. So we were sitting inside, reading a book, sipping our tea, and we could see a whole trail of ticks climbing up this mosquito net, because they could sense that our carbon dioxide in our breath and our presence, they could feel it. So it's that much influenced by the ticks, and we were really taken aback. And why there are so many ticks now? That's because partially because of the global warming. They are expanding their territory. They are hitching rides with birds and small mammals, big mammals. And once they are here, they manage to survive the winter. Our winters are not as cold as they used to be. 25, 30 years ago, in January and February, winter temperatures used to go down to minus 15, 20, 25, and stay there for a week or two. But nowadays, our winters are really mild, and even if we have a day with minus 15 degree or 20 degree weather, it's only 1 or 2 days, and then it bounces back the next day. So the ticks go under the foliage, under the leaf litter, and they manage to survive the winter. So in the spring, they are back with gusto, I should say. So it's a real concern. My third concern is the poison ivy becoming more and more abundant. Now, poison ivy is a beautiful plant. It's in the summer. It has beautiful green waxy leaves that shine, and in the fall it changes the color. This is the painting that I did, and also the flowers are gorgeous. They are white with a little like a yellow tinge, and the berries are beautiful too. And this compound, urushiol compounds, they are hazardous to humans. If we get it on our skin, we get blisters and rashes, but it's not hazardous to other animals. I have seen birds feeding on them, and I have read that mice, squirrel, and even large mammals, deer and bear, use it as a food source even during the winter. So it's a hazard for humans, but not for other animals. And I was trying to find in the literature if there is any reports on abundance of poison ivy during recent years. And I found some. One of those particular studies were done by a group associated with the Harvard University. And they found that the increased levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere make the poison ivy thrive. So there is a reason for our observations about the lusciousness of poison ivy that we see today. When we look back again 25 years ago, when we used to go hiking and canoeing, we see them every now and then, but they are smaller plants and they are just smaller patches. But now we go in various parts of Nova Scotia, the plants are really healthy looking, and they are bigger patches, and they are all over the place. Even when we are canoeing along the portages, we see large patches of poison ivy. So when I see these changes in our environment that are relating to the climate changes that are happening, they are smaller scale, but they are continuous, and they are increasing. I really feel concern and sadness, because when my children were small, they were free to roam around in the woods when we are hiking and camping or canoeing. And they would, they would make clubhouses. They would lie under the bushes and count the ants and look at the leaves flutter in the wind. And, they were free. They didn't have to worry about the ticks or poison ivy or things like that. But now the younger generation, even though I would really like to see them being experienced in the outdoors, I feel that, because of these changes that are happening, there are limits to what they could do. Now, not all the changes that I have been noticing in the outdoors are negative to us humans. One thing that I have noticed is that there are some birds that we didn't used to have in Nova Scotia or had them as rare sites, but now becoming much more abundant. One of those species is the northern cardinal. First time that I saw a cardinal was in 2010. So that was, 13 years ago. And since then, I have been noticing cardinals much more often, much more regularly. I have, in fact, a pair nesting in my backyard. This particular cardinal was in my neighbor's forsythia bush. And I thought it was really striking because the red against that yellow forsythia. And the other species that I have noticed is the red-bellied woodpecker. Again, this species, I had not seen until several years ago. Since then, I am beginning to notice them much more often. They are in urban parks, and this particular bird was in a park near my house. So I went back to bird books, one in particular, which is called The Birds of Nova Scotia by Roby Tufts, that was initially published in 1962, I think, by the Museum of Natural History, Nova Scotia Museum of Natural History. I was curious to see what does that book say about the cardinal and the red-bellied woodpecker. So this is a big book with beautiful figure plates, but the cardinals are not in the figure plates. Red-bellied woodpeckers are not in the figure plates. They were mentioned passing by, and I have excerpts from here. So on cardinals, it says it's a visitant, rare. 8 recordings have been compiled since it was first reported in 1957 in Digby, which is on the south shore of the province. And as for red-bellied woodpecker, it says 5 records. The red-bellied woodpecker is a southern species occurring in Canada, normally only in the extreme southerly parts in Ontario, where it is listed as rare. So that was in 1973 in the second edition. So over the 50 years, even such a short period of time, there are big changes. These birds that were used to more warmer climates, now they have migrated into our province as well. They are beautiful sights, but when you think about whether it is poison ivy spreading fast and becoming food for various animals, or cardinal and red-bellied woodpecker and other species that are moving to our ecosystem, they have a great impact on the balance of this ecosystem that has been established for so long. So they may be pretty sight for our eyes, but these changes have a big effect on the balance in the ecosystem here. So these are the things to think about, and that's what I want to convey. Being outdoors is a great thing, but our exploration and how we do it is changing due to these changes in the climate. Thank you.